Hey everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Hope you're doing well today. My video tutorial today is called Q-tip technique. I'm going to show you how I created this fun card in just a few easy steps. Before we get started on this technique, I would like to invite you to join us in our Facebook groups. We have two of them. One is the Bello's Design Lounge, where we showcase all of our Lavinia creations. We also have another page called Bello's a la carte, and that is where we showcase all of the other suppliers that we use. You can also join us on other social media platforms such as Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. All you have to do is search the hashtag Bello's Designs. All right, let's take a look at the supplies that will be needed to create this card. I will be working on a piece of card that is 5 by 5 inch square. I like to use white card that is at least 110 pounds and mainly 300 GSM in weight. I like this particular weight because it holds a lot of moisture and you can hit it with a lot of water without getting any type of buckling. The stamps that I'll be using today, these are from Sweet Poppy. This stamp set is called Daisy's A5 stamp set, and you get 2 different daisies. Personally, I think they look like coneflowers, but that's just me. They're still gorgeous flowers. And in that set, you get 2 sentiments. Believe you can, and you're halfway there, along with happiness blooms from within. This is the one we'll be using today for the card. Sweet Poppy makes some gorgeous stamps. They are large, without a doubt, but the quality is excellent. And working on a card that is 5 by 5, they fit perfectly. We will also need Q-tips. And I have bundled my Q-tips. I think you'll recognize that little rubber band, don't you? That's from Bello's. Save those, don't throw them away. They come in handy for this technique. If you don't have any very small rubber bands, you can use a piece of any type of tape to group your Q-tips. So I have a couple different groupings here. I have 7 Q-tips in one group, 5 in another, 3 in another. And I'll explain as I go on why I use that number. And I need to preface that this technique is not my own technique by any means. This is a painting technique that was usually done with paint, not ink. And I saw this on Barbara Gray's videos. So I should thank her for sharing that. So the inks that we're going to be using today. The black that's used is the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. The colors that I'm using today, and I am using Distress inks today. I am using Distress ink in Rusty Hinge, Seedless Preserves, and Victorian Velvet. Now let me give you a little bit of information on Distress inks and why I chose it for today. Distressed ink is considered a dye ink. It's transparent. It dries quickly and it appears brighter on your card. And if you look at my card again, you can see the transparency. As long as you let each layer dry and then apply the next layer in the next color, you will still be able to see through the top color to the color beneath. So you understand the transparency that I'm talking about. Now with Distress Oxides, you could use that. If that's all you have, definitely use those inks. Distress Oxide is a hybrid ink. It's a mixture of pigment inks and a little bit of dye ink into it. It's opaque, so it layers beautifully. You just won't have the transparency. It dries slower and you get a softer, chalky finish. But today I chose these because I wanted that transparency. I will also be using my Misty stamping tool and my tool that a friend sent me, which is just a air hockey paddle that helps me press my ink and stamp into my paper. I will be using water and a microfiber cloth just to clean up my stamps. That's all that's needed to clean any type of acrylic stamp. And then I'll show you a technique at the very end where you'll need a black marker of sorts. All right, let's get started. I'm going to bring in my Misty along with my white card, placing it in the corner, and I am using my magnets today. I'm going to begin by stamping the sentiment first. This helps me assure myself that I'm going to have room for that large flower. So anytime you're working with a large stamp, may I suggest that if you're using a sentiment, stamp that first. It just makes placement so much easier. All right, that looks pretty straight to me. And I'm going to be using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. Also, when stamping a sentiment, keep in mind not to press too hard. I just use my fingers for this. With sentiments, thin letters, it's very easy to squish them onto your paper, and then you don't get a real nice crisp print. All right, that looks great. I'm going to just clean this off with water. Again, remember, that's all you need. You do not need any special products to clean off your stamps. And may I again suggest that you clean it off immediately. It just creates a good habit, number one, and it keeps you from making mistakes with that if you're trying to reuse it. Now I'm going to place the daisy in an area where the petals will not cover my my sentiment here. So that looks pretty good. Again, using the VersaFine Clair Nocturne, I'm going to stamp this. Now my ink pad needs a bit of re-inking, so I may have to do this twice. We'll see how it comes out. I'll try to get enough ink on here, so I only need to do one stamp. This is where I use my tool that a friend sent me. Pressing this firmly into the card, letting the ink absorb. Oh, that's good. I don't have to stamp a second time. That is one advantage of using a Misty, is that you can stamp a second time if you didn't get a nice clear image on the first try. All right, let me get that quickly cleaned off. You know, I noticed someone asked in our Facebook group about the staining of stamps, and you know what, that's very common, especially if you use something like an ink that has red in it. Oh goodness, it'll stain forever. But it doesn't hurt the stamp. It's fine to have stained stamps. I mean, this one's not perfect by any means, but it still works. So don't worry about trying to remove those stains. It's just kind of a waste of energy, guys. Okay, so now that this is stamped, I'm just going to give it a few seconds to dry a little bit. I don't need to use a heat tool by any means for this. And that really should be enough. Okay, let's get to those Q-tips. So what I'm going to do is I tend to line up my stamps in the order that I use them. Not necessary, but you can do that if it helps you stay organized. And I'm going to start with the center of my stamp using the rusty hinge. And I'm going to start with the group of 5. Because the area in which I want the most color, I don't need a large space. So simply by dabbing my Q-tip into the ink, I am going to get ink on all of those Q-tips. Start out gently. There's no reason to jam this into the card. Just very lightly, and it will depend on how wet your ink pad is. Just add some ink where you want it to be. Now with this technique, often you will go out of lines, and that's actually what you want. You don't want to confine it to the area. That's what gives it the artsy look. If you do not like the look, the shape of the little circle that this creates, you can pull this to reshape it. You can use your fingers to do that. You'll get inky, or use a pair of tweezers and pull that out. What's nice about this is you can save these once they're dry, or reuse them often. But even if they dry out, you just re-ink again using the same ink, and you'll have this handy dandy little stamping tool. So I'm just going to add a little bit more for now. I'm going to move out into the flower petals themselves. Now this time I'm going to use the group of 7 seedless preserves. Mine's kind of dry, but I'm not being too concerned because I'm not pressing hard on this layer. I am just going to start to tap this on the innermost area of the petals. Now, when you look at your stamps, a lot of times the creator has given us guides. So in these darkened areas that you see, the blackest areas, those are the built-in shadows for you. So I like to follow those areas for darker inks. Now, I know this doesn't look dark now, but I will be layering as this goes on. All right, so I'm going to add a little more seedless preserves, just going back in, tapping over that area, bringing it out a little bit more. And now I'm going to just flip this over because look, it's a two-sided tool. Going into the Victorian Velvet. Now my Victorian Velvet is old and it's pretty dry, but I really want light colors here on the edge, so it's going to work perfectly for me. As you can see, I'm coming far away from the petal because I want to give it that artsy look. Almost like if you think of some beautiful watercolor pictures, they don't always stay within the lines. So it's okay to go out of the lines, and I'm trying to make the direction of these marks go in the same direction of the petals. So I'm going to drag it down just a little bit. Now that's a very light layer of everything. I am going to now take my group of 3. This is where I'm going to start to build my layers. I'm going to go back to that rusty hinge. And being that mine is pretty moist, that pad, I don't feel I need to add anything to these. I'm just going to very lightly again tap, and I'm going to bring some of that color outward. I am leaving some of those sections white just for some added interest. I'm going to repeat and add some of that darker seedless preserves. Now this time I want to show you that, let's say your pad is a little bit dry. You can add a little water to your work surface, tap your Q-tips, and then when you go to press, you will see how much darker that ink is appearing. Almost appears as it could be another color, but just by adding that little bit of water helps to create another layer. And remember, working with distress inks, they are transparent, so you are going to be able to see your layers under. So if you look closely, see if I can get this up, you can see the darker sections, but you can also see the lighter section underneath. Now I'm going to go in with my Victorian Velvet again. Again, this is an extremely dry pad, so I'm going to just put a fine drop of water, add it to the Q-tip. Now this is giving me a little more color in the area of the petals where I would like it. As you can see, I'm trying to fade out as I go. Pick up a little more water. The magic of this distress ink starts to appear as you add your layers. That's when that transparency really stands out. All right, I'm just going to add just a few small areas with this ink. And you can do this as long as you want to do this. You can make as many layers as you would like to do on this, which, you know, I believe I'm going to do one more layer of the seedless preserves. I'm going to go in with the smaller grouping of 5, adding just a tad bit of water. I just need a drop. And I'm going to darken up this area that is closer to the center of the flower. Again, just trying to create some more dimension. See how simple that is? And you could just continue to play with this as long as you wanted until you got the shading that you liked. But I'm going to stop for now, as not to bore you with my Q-tip dabbing. And you can see how easy and what a fun technique this is. I think this would be great for kids to try too. It would just be a good thing to do with them. I think they would have a blast with this. Okay, one more thing before I go. I am going to show you something that I have watched several artists do. If I don't feel like, or I don't want to add a backing piece, what I do is use a magic marker to create a faux backing piece. I save these pieces of nice card that come in our Lavinia stamps because it's a nice sturdy sheet. And what I'm going to do is make a fine lined frame all the way around this card. And to do so, I just line up. It's probably going to be hard because, well, you know what? I'm going to leave it there. Sorry about that. I don't want to ruin my surface here. I am going to line up my Lavinia piece right up to the edge of my card. And using a marker, you can use a Bic magic marker, you can use a Sharpie, something permanent, something dark. I'm going to slowly run the edge of the marker on the edge of the card, keeping pressure at all times here. That will help you from slipping. And as you can see, it makes a very fine, let me get that, very fine black line, which will appear to be a frame. Okay, I'm going to add another one, going along slowly, just dragging the edge all the way down. Let me caution you to do this slowly. I still mess up every once in a while and ruin an entire card because my hand slips. But if you take your time and go slow, applying pressure as you're holding the card down so nothing slips, dragging, always looking forward as to where that pen is traveling, you'll have a lot of success. This is just a nice way to add some dimension and finishing touches to your card. All right, let's take a look at the finished product. And you can see this was such an easy technique to do, very simple. Like I said, I think kids would enjoy doing something like this. I enjoy doing something like this. I'll share quickly with you some others that I have created. Here's one where I just used 2 colors of ink, just a green, and depending on how much pressure I put on the Q-tip, how much water I added to it, I was able to get various shades. I used a little bit of red in there. Here's another one where I just used yellow and that rusty hinge again, actually, in the center. Again, only 1 shade of yellow. I believe that was Wild Honey or Fossilized Amber. I can't remember exactly. But again, by just using the pressure and adding a little bit of water, I was able to get a different shade of that yellow. And then the last one I had created, this was a fun one. And unfortunately, this flower stamp here is retired from Lavinia. But you can see I used various colors of purples, pinks, and yellows. I tend to like to use 3 different colors in the shade, but keeping in mind that if I don't have a light, medium, and dark in a particular shade, I can always lighten it by adding water. Well, guys, thanks again for joining me in my Q-tip card. I hope you give this a try. If you do, please post it in our Facebook groups, depending on the stamp that you use. You can either post it in the Del Bello's Design Lounge or the a la carte lounge and share what you make. I would love to see it. Make sure to tag me in the post. Okay, guys, take care. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.